Welcome to another session. Today we'll be talking about types of social science research. This is part of MGPE 015 Introduction to Research Methods. It is an elective course of Gandhi and Peace Studies. So last time I talked about what is the difference between physical sciences and social sciences, origin of social sciences, objective of social sciences, meaning and definitions of social research, why we should do social research, and what is the objective of research, how research is conducted, purpose of research, methods of social research, qualities of good research, research and its relation to social development, various branches and discipline in social sciences. So all this we have covered in last talk. Today I will be talking about types of research. In this, main thing we should know that already we have some knowledge about what are the good research, what are the disciplines in the social sciences. But today I will be defining and explaining you what is research, what are the different types of research, and the difference between fundamental and applied research and other types of research. So let's start. Research is an absorbing, exciting, enjoyable, and enormously productive activity. As all of you know, research is not only a person is doing some inquiry, going to field, it involves lots of money, time, resources, and that can only be possible by sometimes individual, but most of the time institution and countries, corporate, they conduct this. It's very difficult sometimes for one individual to conduct a variety of research. Many have devoted the greatest part of their lives to this kind of extremely rewarding pursuit and have made great contribution to the knowledge, welfare of the human race. You all know Einstein, Darwin, Louis Pasteur, Newton. They have spent their whole life doing this kind of research and finally bringing this paradigm shift in understanding various things that change our perception about physical world, about social world, and they brought new theories. So what is research? If you see the definition, research is defined as the careful, diligent, and exhaustive investigation of a specific subject matter having as its aim the advancement of mankind's knowledge. Ultimately, research is for the mankind. Sometimes research will not have immediate result. It may have futuristic future result, and sometimes research may not necessarily bring profit or whatever immediate benefit, but it is purely for mankind. So research involves physical scientist in his laboratory. What we usually call research, even artist studying in the museum is research. What kind of arts are there in different period of history and different geographies, different location, culture. Artists study the museum and get the knowledge and do research. Archaeologists digging the ruins, sociologists observing patterns of marital interaction, management team competing through computerized business games, physicians developing new surgical procedure, historian or literature person searching in the library, philosopher meditating in his study. So research is very exhaustive. We all know, from scientist to artist, even the sports person, everybody, even the ordinary person, all do research to some way or other. If it is systematic, we call it is research. But all of us, one way or other, we touch upon some component of research. It is so much, pervasive. What is fundamental, pure or theoretical research? when you talk about research, actually there are broadly two types. One is fundamental, pure or theoretical research. Another is applied research. Fundamental research, let me explain. Fundamental research is original or basic in character, an imaginative and painstaking research worker with his qualities of honesty and integrity and his lust for search of truth makes persistent and patient effort to discover something new to enrich human knowledge in a fundamental fashion. Such research is known as fundamental or pure. As I gave example of Newton, Einstein, even Karl Marx, even anybody, several sociologists, they brought fundamental understanding of society. For example, you talk Weberian model of he organic their Durkheim, Weber, and all this they brought different theories of understanding society, understanding religion. All these brought fundamental change in our understanding of how to look at a particular subject in society. So fundamental research can take shape in two different ways. One is discovering of a new theory, which I mentioned already. Einstein, Galileo, Newton, Karl Marx, they all fall in that. Then development of existing theory. As I mentioned in last time, so many sociologists and social thinkers, they build upon others' work, and that is also important, very important, and part of fundamental research. For example, Keynesian theory. Friedman came out with a new interpretation of a monetary phenomenon, and same way it is based on existing theory, but he developed another, developed it. Then Marxist theory being a base, it came also from Hegel from, it has a tradition. Then neo-Marxist theory build upon the Marxist theory, critiquing the Marxist theory, such kind of development also fundamental research. So when you compare to fundamental research with the applied research is actually more application oriented. Fundamental research need not worry about immediate application, or it need not to think about market, its utility and all. Fundamental research are purely basic and quest for knowledge. This applied research is actually is very operational, and this is conducted to test the empirical content or the basic assumption or the very validity of theory under given condition. Certain theories we apply and test and see its applicability. Such kind of things are called applied research. Applied research contributes to social sciences by providing the kind of convincing evidence of usefulness to society which is necessary to continuing support. It also helps utilizing and developing techniques which can also be made to serve the so-called basic research. And thirdly, applied research also provides data and ideas which may speed up the process of generalization. So applied research has very immediate result. It helps in all this area. Applied research is cost effective usually. Fundamental research takes years and years, sometimes ages, and that kind of highly dedicated laboratory people, scientists is very, very difficult to achieve. Whereas applied research with certain minimal funding and resources, it can be possible, especially countries like India and so many developing countries, they more depend upon applied research because that is affordable. Applied research has practical utility in the developing countries. Instead of spending lavishly on fundamental or pure research, a less developed country may benefit by applying the existing theories and seek plausible explanation of socio-economic behavior. So many of our welfare schemes are based on theories of poverty eradication and all this based on fundamental research elsewhere, but we are applying here. in Indian context, how to bring transformative change in society. In addition to fundamental research and applied research, there are also so many other research that I'll explain now. One is post facto, ex post facto research. Then second is laboratory or experimental research. Third is field investigation research. Then fourth is survey research. Fifth is evaluation research. And sixth is action research. There are many other categories also, but these are broadly categories other than fundamental and applied research. Yes, post facto research usually this is having its own advantage or disadvantage, especially we do after the things happened. Many social events that have already occurred and cannot be repeated or replicated, we do research on that. That is ex post facto research. For example, some cyclone happened. We cannot again again apply that same situation again. It already happened. So we have to see what is the consequences and all after the event happened. A riot happened. After that, we cannot replicate it. It is sometimes by nature or whatever happened. So after that, we do ex post facto research, where the conducting experiment on them is not possible. Ex post facto research method has proved its usefulness in the study of changes like height, weight, athletic performance, morbidity, mortality, fertility, crime rate, and in marriage rates, divorce rate, schooling, traffic accident, alcoholism, drug addiction. So all these areas, after happened, we try to investigate why it is happening, what is the correlation, all these things. So this is called ex post facto research, when the events have already occurred. It is not possible to give a pre-test before the experience to assess the initial comparability of two groups. This is the only drawback, because to assess the impact of a cyclone or certain crime, we cannot replicate it. We have to do just ex post facto research. So these are advantage and disadvantage. The second category of research, types of research, is laboratory experiment. The basic feature of such experiment is very controlled within a environment which outside influences doesn't come. So the exercise control over the independent variable and isolating their influence for plausible explanations. Laboratory experiment is very famous in physical sciences and biology and all this, but social science also it is happening. For example, when you talk about certain policy, its impact on certain group of population, this is also kind of experiment on laboratory type. You take a particular section of population as laboratory, though it is not same as science library. So a laboratory experiment is a research study in which the variance of all or nearly all of the possible influential independent variable not pertinent to the immediate problem of the investigation is kept at the minimum. Programs of social reform such as work relief, unemployment, social insurance, low rent housing, etc., directed to uplift the masses do aim to influence individual and our experiments in the trial and error sense of directing the course of event towards certain desired ends. Such programs are not passive observation of what happens. On the contrary, they are efforts to see that something desired. Next is field experiment. A field experiment is a research study in a realistic situation in which one or more independent variables are manipulated by experimenter under as carefully controlled condition as the situation will permit. where the laboratory experiment has maximum control, most field studies must operate with the less control because as you all know, fields are very dynamic. Many times they interact with multiple other variables and it is very difficult for experimenter to control all the environment. So it has its own virtues and also it has its own limitation. The advantage is the variables in the field experiment operate more strongly those used in laboratory experiment. Advantage of investigating more fruitfully the dynamic interrelationship of a small group of variables. This is very important for when you study the small group in the field experiment. It is very ideal to test the theory and the solution of the real world problem. For example, I'll tell you, for example, like Weber invented found this Protestant ethic and theory of capitalism. He identified certain things, how a particular ethics, religious values influence economic development. But today, if you apply that in real world situation, that may have its, that will be successful, but also you find other groups which are also equally progressing, becoming rich, becoming economically advanced without such values which he found, uh, you know, 1 century before, 2 century before. So the next is survey research. This type of research has become very popular these days as scientific method for discovering relevant impact and interrelationship of social psychological variables from given population. As you know, survey research are very expensive. Only big corporate and government they can conduct because it requires huge resource, huge human resource, economic resource, lots of legal issues and so many time consuming all those things. So this is not usually done by individual researchers. Survey research is mostly devoted to the study of characteristic of population under investigation. In the field of social sciences, interrelationship of sociological, psychological and attitudinal variables are framed for purposes of investigation through the social group from any selected population. Survey research is approached through the methods of personal interview, merit questionnaires and personal discussion besides indirect oral investigation. We usually follow similar, instrument we use for survey research. All of you know the census of India is a large scale survey research where everybody involved, every population, entire population of India is involved, which is conducted once in 10 years. So this kind of survey is really time consuming, resource consuming and very much, very much time taking. Limitation of survey research, as you know, it touches only the surface of the research field and doesn't make a deeper thrust into it. Usually what happens, if you want to do very deep research, it takes time. It takes months, years to get familiarity with cultural, psychological and more deeper situation of individual and community. So survey research doesn't go to that extent. It just asked through interview and whatever, and sometimes the answer it get, it can be contradictory, it can be wrong also. So it has also demand more time, effort and money, as I mentioned in case of census. Sometimes if sample information has not been collected very carefully, so the magnitude of sampling error may be too large to render the sample result reasonably accurate. In fact, sometimes we take a particular sample and do complete survey of that population, and sometimes that may be wrong and the result we replicate, it will be a disaster. So despite the weakness mentioned above, survey research holds a greater promise for social researchers in future for exploring socio-economic information in diverse population. Evaluation research. As you know many times, many of the schemes we do evaluation, mid-term evaluation, concurrent evaluation, periodical evaluation, terminal evaluation. So all these are necessary to know the impact of certain policy. So when you talk about evaluation research, these are very important. You have to take impact of a particular policy in different stages. Then only you will know its impact. For example, if we change any syllabus for a primary school children, we have to observe over time before it was introduced, maybe after 1 year, maybe after 2 years, how its impact on the children happening. Same with the various government schemes. For example, the NREGA scheme. You have to see whether before introduction people are well off, after introduction, after some years, whether there is any transformative change in particular by applying particular policy in a certain population. So those kind of research. Then last one I'll be talking about action research. Action research is very buzzword in last at least 1 decade, because many NGOs they have taken this in their activities, because they do lots of grassroots level activities. So they do research and change, transformational change hand in hand. For example, if they go to any village, most of the such kind of grassroots NGO, they collect data, they analyze it, and they bring new policies on an experimental basis. So action research came in this kind of background, where transformational change through action come research. It goes hand in hand. By its very definition, it is a research through launching of a direct action with the objective of obtaining workable solution to the given problem. As I mentioned, many NGOs are working. So now, when I talk about all this research, you need not to generalize. Many of this research they cut across actually. The same time they can be action research, it can be survey, all these things. So only thing is what context you are judging, what kind of research you are taking. It also involves cost, because cost is very important thing. For example, if you are an individual having no financial support, you have to take certain research which you can do, and that involves, for example, you take a sample survey, you go to do limited study in a time bound manner, and then you generalize. Such kind of many PhD scholars and many of the projects they do like this. Then also time, whether research allow you to have a longer time, 10 years, 5 years. Sometimes research can happen more than decades. Okay, so variety of you make a longitudinal research where you compare different stages of sometimes 100 years also. So you have to see those things, whether your research is very much relevant to current time or future time, comparative, whether it has money, whether it has resource, other resource. Resource also is not limited to money and people. It also involves many other things. For example, your area for operation, your access, all those things, and you have support system there. So all those things, environment in which research is done. For example, you cannot do research in some area in a difficult time. For example, if somebody want to know certain things about a certain group of population, sometime the researcher cannot have access to go there. For example, at this point, many of the areas are cut off due to large snowfall, so researcher cannot go. So these kind of things all are you have to consider when you take up research: cost, time, resource, environment, Also ethical consideration. Many times I told in the last talk, ethics are very important. It also factor in research, conducting research. So many research you have to see how and which circumstances is relevant. You have to see the time, cost and resources. So we can also refer certain books which are very fundamental to understand various types of research. Chaplin F. Stewart, Experiment Design in Sociological Research, which was published in 1947, and there are a number of books which you can refer to understand better the the topic types of research. Thank you.